Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Political Playbook. I'm Wyatt, and this is my co-host Darren. Today, we've got a jam-packed episode for you guys. Really, just covering a couple of stories, a little bit older, but still good to kind of give our thoughts on with this government shutdown. There's not a lot of politicking going on right now, which can be good depending on who you ask. So, let's get to the first one right away. Darren, so there was this story about a week ago, a little bit over. Basically, we have some leaked group chats. My understanding is there was a member within the Young Republicans organization with an axe to grind. He lost some little political committee spot that he was really gunning for, and as a way to like get revenge and vengeance, he decided to leak all of the messages condemning everybody. Right? So he didn't just, condemn the dude who beat him. He condemned everyone associated with that guy. I mean, these people's lives are ruined. They've already been fired. Many of them have been suspended. A couple of them are like one's a sitting state senator. So this is very bad, and we'll get into the contents of what they said, which is also even worse. So as bad as it is to like backstab and do all that for like personal gain or personal grievance, it what they said in the group chats was even worse. So just to give the audience like a light understanding of what they said, uh, anti-Semitic remarks, racist remarks specifically against black people, Asian people, stuff like that, homophobic, anti-feminist stuff, misogynistic stuff. There was a little bit like there were calls for rape. So we have some violence indicated in this chat, and I'm sure we're going to disagree about the nature of a lot of this, but this is just like the facts of the matter right now. And really, no one came to their defense. Pretty much everyone condemned them. Our Senator Mark Wayne Mullen went on CNN to condemn these young Republicans. They did get JD Vance, so Darren, unfortunately, you're going to have to defend JD Vance. So, but my monologue is basically over. So, Darren, if you just want to give any of your thoughts or anything you want to say about this matter, or like a key question and the theme of this conversation should be, what role does the Republican Party have in policing their own?
Yeah, so in terms of let me give a little more context. So the guy who leaked it was a guy named Gavin Wax, and he is the chair or the president, I guess, basically the leader of the New York City Young Republicans. Now, I believe their title is just, or the name of their organization is the NYYRs, so the New York Young Republicans. And this is distinct from the New York State Young Republicans, which is a different organization. One is the state and one is city level. And I'm not certain exactly what his motivations were. Like you said, many speculated that it was due to, some committee assignment within the Young Republicans, which, you know, basically, this whole thing, I mean, it's a big networking thing in a way, but, these Young Republican organizations, there's not like it's not like you have any real power if you're like the president of one of these organizations. I mean, it's basically like a high school student council on a big stage, almost. I mean, it's not like these. Now, these guys are future leaders of tomorrow, but it's not like this is, these people aren't like writing legislation and enforcing laws or anything. This is like a more of a social thing. Uh, but some people speculated that he did all this over a snub, like a picture snub with Trump. Like apparently this Gavin Wax guy didn't sign up to get his picture taken with Trump, and somebody else was supposed to sign up for him or something, and then he didn't get his picture, and so it caused this outrage. I don't know. I've heard multiple things, but from what I have seen, it is definitively Gavin Wax who leaked these messages. So over some internecine conflict. So total backstabber. And personally, I hope that he does not find employment anywhere since he's ruined the prospects of all these other young people.
Well,
So I'll
that's
say,
just to jump in really quick. It's really sad to me that the likely scenario here is that all of these dudes who let's be real, this chat was a private chat full of boys. They were, there was definitely at the very least some locker room talk going on, right? They would not be saying this publicly, right? They said this in good confidence, and all of their lives are ruined, but the guy who leaked the message, his life will not be ruined because of this, right? Their lives are ruined forever beyond redemption, right? At least their political life. And this guy who stabbed him in the back, who committed a sin 10 times worse than any like voice text or any, joke that was not in the best manner, right? And he's not going to
yeah,
have any consequences. That's astounding to me.
probably no real consequences. I believe he has resigned from his post as the leader of the New York Young Republicans, but of course, that was voluntary. He was not fired, and he likely will keep his job. I believe he's actually, you know, in the White House, or at least working for officials in the White House. I forget his exact role. He's under a number of people, but uh, he's in there. So in the working as an executive branch staffer. So yeah, I just don't have much tolerance for people being like acting like Judas. Uh, he jeopardized ostensibly his own movement just to settle a personal score. So I don't know what the calculus was. It was incredibly dumb on his part, but time will tell. Maybe he'll get his comeuppance. But let's forget all that now that I've laid out my disdain for the guy. Let's talk about the content of the texts and what we think ought to be the punishment. Should there be a punishment? Um, so obviously, I don't support leaking private texts, especially by people that are supposed to be on your own side. But nevertheless, they were leaked. So now the question is, what's to be done? Um, Look, I found, obviously the texts obviously are not good optics. But I do think most of them, if not all, were said in jest. They had an air of humor about them. Uh, yeah, I. This is kind of just how young people talk these days. I think, especially on the right. I doubt that too many liberal group chats are like this, but I do know left wingers who will engage in edgy humor themselves. Uh, I think it's like an anti woke backlash. It's been, yeah, I think it's been part of the culture. So I can see how maybe an older generation of Republicans would see this and be just totally flabbergasted, and I'm sure they think it's like the worst thing ever. But I mean, this is probably pretty par for the course in terms of like young people's group chats. Maybe I'm projecting a little, but I don't think anything said here was way too crazy. I mean, let me read some. So we have, I took a photo of the parts of the Politico article. So, um,
Well, listen, we
yeah.
don't. I mean, if you want to get into specifics, we can. But I mean, we can. Don't. I mean, d- I don't know. If you want to, go ahead. I'm just okay.
Okay, well, there was like some kind of like young Republican, like they were voting or something, and one of the people said that everyone that votes against or votes no is going to the gas chamber. Well, obviously he's not gonna put anyone in a gas chamber. That it's not like an actual call for violence. It's, I mean,
Right. I
honestly,
listen. So I don't deny that there are some jokes here, right? But I mean, don't you agree that like I mean, some of these dudes were like one of these dudes was a state senator, right? And some of these people work in the administration. Like, don't you think that there's a line like, using the N-word or saying like one of these guys, apparently the dude that this Gavin Wax, right? The
uh,
guy he had one of the biggest beefs with, you know, this Peter Gunta guy, right?
yeah,
He
yeah.
said, "I love Hitler." You know what I mean? Like the right can't have that in political. Now, listen, I don't want anybody to get fired for anything they say in like an edgy group chat, okay? But I also understand that like there's no room for that in the political sphere. There's just not, right? Like there is a hard line and it ends with "I love Hitler." It can't we can't allow it, right? So I don't know. Like you walk me through this. Like what part of this do you think is like defensible from the stance of like these people should keep their jobs?
I think it's like even this great "I love Hitler" comment. It came after. So the context was, yeah, this, like, I think it was another young Republican. Like, something was up to a vote, and they were like, yeah, they're basically going to vote for the most right wing person there. And this one guy, I believe it was Giunta that, or however you pronounce his last name, it looked Italian, but I believe it was Giunta that said, oh, I'm right wing, great. I love Hitler, because they're going to vote for the most right wing person. I think it was obviously said tongue in cheek. I get, I totally get how it's not optically sound, but the context also is that these are private messages. It was said in confidence. Uh, yeah, I mean, obviously, you're gonna save your edgy jokes for your friends, and you're not gonna say it in public. You have to kind of. It's not really being two faced. It's more of like, you can engage in a different style of humor among the in group, and then when you're more public facing, you have to be, more careful so as not to offend people, but I just see it as tongue in cheek. So uh
Nah,
I don't
see,
see much of
I
a
can't,
problem.
I super cannot agree, right? And I don't mean to go like full Karen on you here, right? But some of this stuff is flat. First of all, the idea that these people are like kids, which is what a lot of people try to paint these guys as, these dudes are in their like, late 20s, early to mid 30s, right? Like these are not, 16-year-old kids in a group chat, right? Like that's not what this is. All right. These are a bunch of frat dudes who didn't grow up and they're talking about, stuff that they shouldn't be talking about, holding the positions that they hold. I just think like listen, I agree with you that like the context of like how we got these messages are like shitty and like very like betrayal based. But that doesn't take away from like the disgusting nature of the text themselves.
Okay. Honestly, like I guess I'm saying all this, but honestly, I guess my line of defense doesn't even matter because personally, like I mean, the texts don't offend me because I read all of them as being like joking. I don't think any of them like have like true malice behind them. So
I could kind of see where you're coming from, but I will tell you that like many of the people within the Republican Party did not think so. Like Mark Wayne Mullen, for example, as I said earlier, he condemned these. And the I can't remember who he was talking to on CNN, but she was saying that like, well, what do you say to like JD Vance, who said that like, oh, these are young guys, this is how young guys talk. He basically said, hey, look, I got young boys, and if they talked like this, I'd smack them across the head. Like, what the hell is wrong with you? Now listen, he's an elected senator, right? He might have to say that. I don't know what he actually believes. But I mean, my gut says that he's kind of right. Like he kind of thinks that politics and like elected officials and like the future of the party has to be above this. You know what I mean?
yeah, I mean, I totally get where like a normie would be coming from, like somebody who's not in on the joke, so to speak. Uh, and I forgot to say this, but I do agree with your point that even though I agree with a lot of what JD Vance said, my one criticism of his defense, I guess, or one of my little criticisms about it would be the infantilization of these guys. I mean, they were like, I think the oldest one was like 35, like mid 30s or something. Yeah, I mean, they should know better. They should have a bit more OPSEC, so to speak. I mean, if you're in a giant chat and you're using your real name, you kind of have to operate as though something like this would get leaked, even if you do think everyone in there is your friend. I mean, you know, I get it, but maybe keep, the edgy stuff to you and your like actual like real life friends rather than like your political network, that you've built up. It was just, I mean, in some way it is hard to feel too sorry for them because I mean the OPSEC was just really bad from the get-go. I mean, I engage in edgy humor all the time, but I mean, this is basically the equivalent of me getting in a group chat with all the people from my office and then like making Hitler jokes and expecting that none of it would end up in HR. I mean,
Right,
something
right,
something very well
100%.
could leak.
And here's the thing, like you understand that like once that gets leaked in your analogy to HR, you understand HR has a job to kind of police that, right?
Oh yes.
Certainly. Okay.
Oh
All right,
yes.
good. Okay. So I think we've discussed the contents enough. We both sort of kind of agree that like what was said, I mean, you think it's more jokey, I think it's more like even if it is a joke, it's kind of beneath the standard I think that, thought leaders in the Republican movement should have. But we both definitely agree on the betrayal part of this guy. It was a personal axe to grind. He ruined the lives of his colleagues and his friends for basically personal gain or vengeance or whatever. But now, like shifting gears just a little bit, this is like the core of our discussion. Some of the defense of this was kind of split on the right. So you have guys like Ben Shapiro, for example, who came out in total condemnation of this guy or of this chat. And then you have guys like Matt Walsh and JD Vance, who basically like did everything they could to minimize it and say, no, like we cannot infight right now. Like it kills our momentum. Plus, it was all jokes anyway. I just want to get your take, and this is more of a broad question, not even necessarily specific to this case, but what duty do you think the does each side have to police their own?
I think my personal line, and I get that my personal line is probably different than most people's, but I'd say like individual calls for violence. So like if you called for violence against like an individual
Hmm.
or strongly hinted at it, to me that's more of my line. Yeah, like okay, so this is a total whataboutism. It's what, but I'm going to use it anyways. So part of JD Vance's defense of these guys was he brought up this text exchange between this guy named Jay Jones, which is this guy running to be the AG of Virginia,
Hmm.
and he said of the Virginia state speaker that he wished he would die and that his kids were little fascists and he hoped his kids would die. I think
Hmm.
to me that's worse. Pers- I find that worse than like everyone that votes no is going to the gas chamber or great, I love Hitler. Uh, Now, neither are optically good, but personally, for me, when you're calling out individuals more so and kind of saying nasty things, wishing for their death rather than broad or vague, like harm adjacent language, I guess you could call it. I find that more egregious just because it seems to actually stem from a place of hatred, like or personal antipathy. To me, it seems like there's actual malice behind it. Whereas the malice that potentially is behind a statement like everyone that votes no is going to the gas chamber, it seems more muted to me. But how about you? Where do you draw the line? And uh, I'm sorry to engage in whataboutism, but it's kind of just the example on the top of my head since JD
No, 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 no,
Vance.
no, no. You're all good. Listen, the left needs policing just as much as the right does, right? I mean, anyone who doesn't admit that is psychotic, I think. I mean, this idea that intolerance, violence, nasty human personality only exist on the right, I think is a fantasy. If anyone believes that, I don't think that people really do. I think we all pretty much recognize that each side has their own ugly people. You know what I mean? But I mean, for me, when it comes to the left, really the Democrat Party in general, I'm cool with about a million different positions. I'm about as open of a guy you'll ever meet. For me, it's definitely like calls to violence. That's my like hard line. We can't do that. And we probably shouldn't demonize. So like I would never go against like a group. So just as an example, and this isn't really a left wing thing, but it'll paint the picture where you shouldn't really paint, the gays as a enemy group or the Mexicans or the immigrants or whatever. You should not paint a broad swath of people. And I understand that it's politics and that happens, right? Because like Biden's whole thing, right, was MAGA Republicans. And the attempt there was to kind of make that group as minimum as possible. And then the actual messaging was perceived as like anyone who voted for Trump was a MAGA Republican, according to Joe Biden, right? So, like, I would have policed that language. I would have been like, Joe, or Mr. President, I guess. You can't say that because it's being perceived as you're condemning half the country. And that's not what you were elected to do, right?
Yeah, I see your point.
Right. So, if you're going to condemn, I'm almost the opposite. Like, I would rather you condemn an individual for their acts, right? So, just as an example, like you could condemn like Pete Hegseth and say he's totally incompetent, he's totally inadequate at the job, he's not qualified, he's in over his head. I'm totally cool with all of that. But what you can't do is you can't do what Hillary Clinton did and call half the country a bunch of fucking morons, even if they are. Like, you just can't do that, you know? And you probably shouldn't be making these jokes. Like if a Democrat chat leaked, which they almost certainly exist, right? if they if they leaked and they were saying some really out of pocket stuff about like, I'm glad, just as an example, and this is not me, I'm glad Charlie Kirk got shot, right? If somebody said that, I would be like, you got to go. You're done. We can't have you in the movement. And I understand that's a violence one, so that one's like the easy one to point out. There's not a ton of moral agency behind it, but if you ask me like gray areas, odds are I'm like, sorry, this is a higher standard to be involved in politics, in my opinion. So you got to go. That's just me.
Yeah.
And
I
I
mean,
and I just want to make this final point. Sorry, I think it is incumbent on each party or each political movement to police their own because a it's more effective, and well, that's really the biggest one is that it's the most effective. So
yeah, it's a tough line for me. Like, because I'm trying to balance so many things. It's like I feel stronger antipathy to like the Judas figure, Gavin Wax, but on the other hand, it's like, okay, we're at this point now. Now what? I mean, yeah, I don't think every message they sent was necessarily worthy of a firing, but there were a handful that it's like, okay, yeah, you gotta, unfortunately, because of this specific message, even though it was a private group chat, now that it's been leaked, I mean, there was one about, somebody was watching a basketball game and some guy, I forget which one specifically said this, but he said, like, I'd go to the zoo if I wanted to watch monkey play ball. So obviously he's talking about black people, being monkeys or something. And so, obviously if you send something like that and it comes out, unfortunately, if you're going to be in politics, you're likely going to represent a minority of black people. So you really can't, at that point have your job. I mean, it's unfortunate that, your private thing got leaked, but also maybe you shouldn't have been texting that in a group chat. But
well, and it is a weird phenomenon because, as this generation, like your generation and my generation, as we get older, these group chat leaks are going to be insane. Like, eventually, we're going to see a president, like, high school group text, right? Like, is that not nuts? And can you imagine, like, just imagine when you guys were in high school, if you're listening, and just imagine if everything you ever said or did was recorded and there was a digital footprint back to it. You couldn't hold your job today as a dude, as a man. It's just, I'm sorry, boys are boys. We
oh
tend
yeah,
to have edgy humor. We tend to say stuff that's out of pocket and out of line, especially if we feel like we're in an environment where we're not going to be held accountable for what we say, right? And that's just the way it is. So we're going to have to learn to live with this reality at some point. But
unfortunate.
we're definitely not there yet, though, as you can tell by all the boomers in office condemning this as quick as they possibly can.
Yeah, yeah, because the boomers, they don't have like a digital record of all the messed up stuff they said when they were 15. But oh, yeah, I mean, I can remember some of the group chats I was in, even in middle school. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
Gen Z
every
is
dude
just,
has this, right?
oh,
And
yeah, oh,
and
yeah.
for you girls out there that think that you're excluded from this, you're not. Any girl will tell you that they had group chats too, and they talked about, whether it was dudes, whether it was like, popular culture stuff in a not kosher way, right? I mean, it happens to everybody. No one's exempt from this. I think that the biggest issue right now is, particularly in this case, like white men, right? Because they tend to be a little bit more online. They tend to be a little bit more edgy, you know. So we're gonna have to battle with this as a society. And I don't really have like a rough stake other than like on my side. Obviously, there's just a high standard for me personally. Um, which, I mean, so like for you, let me just ask you this: when Trump, the whole grab her by the pussy thing, that didn't disqualify him from being president. So why do you think that they weren't upset by him saying that, and but they seem to be way more upset about this group chat all of a sudden?
Yeah, I mean, it's multifaceted. I think for one, I think the magnitude of it was a little different. So, like, you know, I mean, saying I'd go to the zoo if I wanted to watch monkey play ball. Maybe I think that's probably worse than grab her by the pussy. I would rank it worse. I don't know. Maybe somebody would have a different ranking. Also, at that point in the campaign, Trump was what the Republicans were left with. So it's not like they could not vote for him if they planned on voting Republican. I mean, it was him versus Hillary at that point. So they kind of had to just stick with their guy, uh, even if bad things or unoptical things came out. So I think that's why they weren't. I mean, he definitely suffered a lot of condemnation when that audio recording leaked. But yeah, definitely more people were willing to just stick with him despite or in spite of it. Rather than they're willing to stick with these young Republicans in spite of their texts. How about you though? Where do you rank grab her by the pussy versus monkey play ball?
I mean, it's tough. They're both bad, obviously, but like for me personally, I think that it's probably worse to basically imply that because you're rich and because you're powerful, that you can just completely objectify an entire half of the human species. Like basically the idea is that like I'm so rich, I'm so powerful, women just want to get with me. I can walk up to them and just grab them by the pussy, and there's not a damn thing that they're gonna do. Like that to me is way more disgusting uh, than implying, making the analogy that in the other case, right? Like I said, they're both bad. And listen, that could just be my anti-Trump goggles getting in the way. I won't lie to you that we can't rule that out, but that's just what my gut says.
Yeah, it's subjective. I guess
Now,
it's
I was 16 when he said that, or I guess when that recording came out. I don't know when he actually said it. I think it was from way back, or even earlier than when they released it. But I did not care then, but I also thought politics was more House of Cards than what it is, So, like, I had
yeah.
no concept that these people are making decisions that impact millions of Americans. I just thought that this was like fun government stuff. I had no idea that it was as serious as it is. So, I wouldn't have, like, now that would be disqualifying. Like, if Mamdani had a clip, right, in the New York mayoral race where he basically talks about, grabbing women on the ass and, doing all sorts of crazy stuff, I'd be like, okay, we can't vote for you. Sorry. We'll have to rock it out with Cuomo
See,
again.
I guess this is my strongest. This is probably where I can most clearly say I disagree. I don't find it disqualifying. And this will be a good segue into our next topic. I definitely don't find the grab her by the poontang to be disqualifying. Most of these messages I don't find to be disqualifying, especially in the context they were all said in jest and in private. But this is a good segue to the next topic, which is Graham Plattner. I want to know, do you find what he said and his unfortunate tattoo, is that disqualifying to you? I saw a Democrat on Twitter today saying it was disqualifying for them, but I'm trying to put myself into the shoes of a theoretical Democrat, like say I was a Democrat, I don't think it would be disqualifying for me any of the things that Graham Plattner said or even his tattoo. Now it certainly is not optical, much like these young Republicans. But I think if my politics were, you know, lefty, then, and I believed in, you know, whatever, progressivism, then I think I'd still vote for him. But what say you?
Well, let me just give to the audience who might not know, let me just give some backstory to this. So, Graham Plattner is running for Senate in the state of Maine. He's trying to take Susan Collins' seat, right? And there is this, he's basically on this tour right now to get ahead of the press. So, my guess, and this is just speculation, is that somebody came to him. They said, "We know about your tattoo. We know about the Reddit page. So, would you like to comment?" Right? And so he did everything he could to get ahead of the bad press, right? Which I'm not sure is even going to work, but who's to say? So he basically has a tattoo that he got when he was in the Marines. And it's basically of a skull and crossbones that he got when he was stationed, I think it was in Croatia. He was overseas. And as it turns out, that tattoo is like a Nazi tattoo. Like it's a lesser known one. It's not like the lightning bolts. It's not like the swastika. It's not. People know it if you know your Nazi history, evidently. And he claims he doesn't know. He said we just, we were drunk. We were Marines. We decided to all get a tattoo, and that's what we got. So, he plans on getting it removed. So I was like, okay, I don't really think that there's any reason to lie about that. And if you listen to the guy talk, Darren, he's very clearly not a Nazi, right? Like, is that fair to say? Like, none of his policy prescriptions even remotely resemble fascism.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree, and I always try to take a charitable tact. I don't think there's anything National Socialist about this guy. I listened to an interview with him from the Pod Save America guys
Hmm.
today, and he seems to be your pretty standard progressive type guy. He was a Marine. He was in Croatia. He got a tattoo. When you're in the military, you get a bunch of tattoos, and you know, he wanted a skull and crossbones, and he is not knowledgeable of World War II history, and he didn't recognize the Totenkopf, so he got. I mean, it's a cool looking design. So I mean, just objectively. So I mean, you can totally see why out of a lineup of skull and crossbones, why you would pick that one. I mean, it does look cool. So
And listen,
I,
all he has to do to really verify this story, if he has one or two buddies that he claims he got the tattoo with, if they'll just verify that, like, look, I have the tattoo as well, we didn't know at the time, right? I mean, that would clear his name instantly. So it's one of those things that, like, listen, if he got the tattoo and he knew about it, that would be concerning. But, like, looking at this, the way this dude talks to his constituents or his would be constituents, right? And listening to like just his politics in general, this guy is not a tear us apart guy. This guy is like a how can I bring as many people together as possible type of guy. Very like populist, not trying to divide like a stark line, in the people. So I'm not really that concerned with the tattoo. And plus he said he's going to get it removed and he owned up to it, right? So now, as for the comments, I'm sure you saw the comments he made when he was younger, right? His Reddit.
yeah, and again with his Reddit, I don't think anything that he said would be disqualifying for me if I was of of the left, because I mean it's unoptical, and I can conceive of why people on the left are mad, but I also think a lot of the outrage comes from a more like uncharitable tact that a lot of people on the left take, and this is one of my criticisms of the left broadly, that they're uncharitable with the right. So it's kind of strange seeing it being twisted and placed on their own side, but nevertheless, he made some comment. There was a Reddit thread, and if you're on Reddit, you see these kind of threads all the time. It was in some subreddit like ask whoever anything, and the prompt was if you could ask a person of another race any question, what would it be? And this Graham Plattner guy had worked as a bartender, and he had noticed in his time bartending that the black patrons did not tip as much as the white patrons. So he asked, why do blacks not tip? Uh, and I mean, this is a stereotype that it exists, and it seemed. I mean, it's something I've heard reported that you know it's not very optical to say, but yeah, I mean that they don't tip quite as much as whites. So he was just kind of wondering, is there like a cultural reason for that, or what? And he seemed to be asking it honestly, not like a rhetorical question, like he already had surmised the answer beforehand and wanted to take a jab. I think he genuinely was wondering if there was a cultural reason, and he recounted how an IRL friend of his who happened to be black told him that there was like cultural reasons. They used some kind of like lefty justification, like lack of agency due to like white supremacy or something. So, it's not an argument that I find compelling, but it seemed to do the trick for Graham Plattner. He seemed to be satisfied with it. So based on his response, I think he genuinely wanted to know why he was noticing this trend that black people tip less than whites in his experience. So, I don't think it's disqualifying, but what say you?
Well, I think the context of like when this was said matters, right? So for the audience who doesn't know, I'll give you an example. So Darren, you know who Josh Allen is, right? The
Mm-hmm.
quarterback for the Buffalo Bills, the Winter Soldier. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
great guy. When he got drafted, and this is a very common story, that when he got drafted, he got up on stage, he took his picture with Roger Goodell, the commissioner of the league, and it was supposed to be one of the proudest moments of his life. Like when you get drafted in the NFL as high as he did, this is as big of an important moment in your life as like, joining the military, graduating from college, getting your trade school license. Like this is a big deal. And in what was supposed to be his biggest moment turned into, oh, there's leaked images of his old Twitter account saying the N word, saying homophobic stuff, right? When he was like 13. Okay. So I think that like the context of the time matters. Like that's not who Josh Allen is, right? Like he's not a racist, homophobic guy because he said something when he was 13, right? Uh, my understanding with like this Plattner guy is a bunch of this stuff was said like 4 years ago. So he's a grown man, he's like in his mid 30s when he said this. And I think that makes a huge difference because at that point, I think you kind of are who you are, or at least more of who you're going to be. Uh, a, a lot of the stuff, like, he labeled, like, he was pretty anti cop in there. He described rural America, which is like where he comes from, as like, no, they're actually stupid and racist on Reddit. And that's, I mean, isn't that a problem? Like,
Yeah,
I don't
I mean,
I don't
it,
know if it's disqualifying, right? But it's definitely concerning. Like, and listen, it's not going to be for 90% of the left. I'll be honest with you, but I think that like what our politicians say is infinitely more important than what they think it is. So I think it trickles down. I think it does.
Yeah, I mean, I guess this is just a difference in our disposition towards uh, speech in general. To me, speech offends me less, I think, and uh, like, like because if I were on the left and you know, I would still vote for this guy because he's more directionally what I would theoretically want. Same with these young Republicans. I'm really just not too scandalized by what they said. I mean, because I go in, I understand that what people say online is going to be different than what they say in public. And, you know, you can say, well, maybe what they say online belies their true sinister nature. I say more of like what people say online is more venting. It's more, they want to troll a little. They want to rile people up. They're not expecting it to get dug up years later to be used against them. So I don't know. I don't know. If I were on the left, I would still vote for the guy. To me, I don't find like even the whole comment about how rural Americans are, all like racist and stupid. To me, I, I don't find it shocking because I've almost come to expect that sentiment from the left, I guess. So, am I surprised that somebody who's running for, you know, to be a senator in Maine, am I surprised that he said something like this and in a private text exchange? No, I'm not surprised at all. I suspect 80% of elected Democrats have expressed a sentiment in a similar fashion. So uh, I'm just not scandalized by it, even though I'm probably, I'm I was born in a relatively rural setting. So, I mean, you could argue that maybe that comment was targeted at people such as me, or at least certainly family members of mine would fall into that category. It's just I think it's more par for the course. In some ways, unfortunately, it's par for the course, but I don't know. I'm just not that
Yeah.
scandalized by it.
So just to get to our disagreement a little bit more, and I'm not trying to change your mind, or I'm just trying to let you know like where I'm coming from. It seems a little bit like and by the way, most of America is on your side of this. Like most people are not offended what people say in private chats or what they say, 10 years ago or 5 years ago, right? They're more than willing to be forgiving of that, right? I think that the problem with that is that you're almost trying to bring politicians down in a position that is supposed to be a leader, a thought leader, a moral leader, for this country. You're bringing them down to the layman, to the everyday people. And I know that sounds elitist, but I mean, like it or not, we are influenced by the words and actions of these politicians, right? They they don't get away with what they'll allow us or what we'll allow them to get away with. They get away with what they'll allow themselves to get away with. So when you elect people who say things that are like demonizing of half the country, you should not be shocked when then half the country is at each other's throats. And that's, you know, we should now listen. Like I said, with this guy, if you listen to him speak at any of these town halls, he is more than willing to be charitable and kind and let's bring everybody together. Let's everyone like we're one America, right? So that is at least not as concerning. But I think to see, like, if a priest said something that was out of line or out of pocket or intentionally divisive, then I feel like we could all reasonably be like, dude, what the fuck? You're supposed to be a priest. You're supposed to be a leader. You're supposed to be a guy who guides us, right? I kind of hold a similar standard to politicians because, like it or not, they have that same role, right? We don't want to admit it, but that's just the way it is, right? I don't know what else to say.
Well, I certainly, I totally get where you're coming from. Yeah, I mean, it would be nice to roll back the clock, so to speak, to a more civilized age in terms of the public discourse. But uh, on the other hand, I just feel as though that ship has basically sailed. So uh, I don't know. I what would you have? What would you have Graham Plattner do? Would you have him drop out of the race if it was up
No,
to you?
no,
Or
no. If I were like his advisor or whatever, I would, like be like, hey, you have to own this, which it seems like he's preparing to do. And I don't think that the left wing media should be running cover for this. Like, did you listen to that Pod Save America thing?
oh yeah, I listened to it.
Okay, would you say that that was hard hitting journalism and like, or did you feel like they were mostly running cover, throwing up softballs?
I felt as though look, I mean, they weren't like yelling at him. They broached the issue.
They were fair, right? But I
I
mean,
think
if
they were charitable. I
But
think they were
let's be
charitable.
real. Let's just call a spade here. If Lindsey Graham was sitting across the table convicted of the exact same thing, do you really think Pod Save America would be as charitable and as cordial as they were with Graham?
I actually had that same thought while listening to it. No, I don't think they would be. And I do understand it coming from their perspective. But yeah, I mean,
Look,
it definitely is.
I understand the nature of media and specifically political media, right? I understand that there is a little bit of like, okay, we really want the Democratic side to win, so we have to ask the questions, but we're going to do it in the most lighthearted way, right? I just I just don't think that we can do that. Like it's only going to make us worse. And it's only going to put people that are opportunists in those positions, and we don't need opportunists in those positions, any of them. Like and listen, I agree with what you're saying that like I'm being a little utopian right now, right? I'm kind of asking for something that's not really probable in this era. But I can't help but feel like, we don't have a choice because our society is like corrupting right in front of our eyes, right? And we're literally watching it happen and, honestly, we're probably consenting to it happen.
Yeah, I mean, that there is something to say, about idealism. That you know, it would be for the best if everybody was virtuous, but yeah, I don't know. I don't know how we climb the de-escalation ladder regarding all this. I mean, it's hard to say because these two events, this Politico hit job on the YRs, and then this whole Graham Plattner thing, and even the Jay Jones thing, they're not perfectly analogous. So, while these young Republicans did get fired or were made to resign from all their posts, these Democrats are, they're still standing. I don't know how they're going to fare going forward. I don't know that Jay Jones will win his election. I don't know that Graham Plattner will win his election. So, we'll see. We'll see. Maybe everybody who was caught doing something offensive this time around will lose, and maybe that will be better for the country. But who knows?
Well, I'll tell you, I'm not super optimistic in that. And by the way, just, as full transparency to the audience, like I like Graham Plattner. I hope he wins. Like especially over Susan Collins. He is infinitely preferable to her. But ultimately, like if he doesn't raise the standard, then we can't vote for him. Luckily, in his case, it's a pretty low standard with Susan Collins, who it seems like her and Lisa Murkowski seem to take turns being the no vote on certain legislation to where they can, voice their dissent, but also the legislation still passes. So I swear, Darren, I'm telling you, they take turns. Like, look at their voting record. Like, one of them will vote yes whenever it's a one vote legislation, the other one will vote no, and then just alternate. It's hilarious. Um, so
Oh yeah,
either one of
they're
them, the governor of Maine, who's a Democrat, is also running. They would be preferable, but yeah, I don't know. I wish that we could get a little bit better candidates.